The sky over St. Mary's Cemetery was gray, a dull blanket of clouds pressing down on us as if the world itself was in mourning. My wife, Linda, had been my anchor for 35 years. Now she was nothing more than a polished oak casket, lowered into the ground with the mechanical groan of ropes. I stood at the edge, my hands gripping the handle of my cane harder than I needed to. My knuckles ached, but I welcomed the pain. It kept me from collapsing. Emily, my only daughter, leaned against her husband Jason for support. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with red. She looked like my little girl again, fragile, lost. But Jason, he didn't look broken, not even close. His tall frame was rigid, his jaw locked, and his expression carried no grief. He wore his tailored black suit like it was a business meeting, not a funeral. He placed a protective arm around Emily, but his eyes drifted often, calculating, distant, like he was already moving on to the next chapter. The priest's words blurred into background noise. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. I had heard those lines before at my parents' funerals, but they had never pierced me like this. This was my wife, my Linda, the woman who had shared her every smile, her every burden with me. Gone. When the last shovelful of dirt hit the casket, the crowd began to disperse. Neighbors offered their condolences, voices soft, rehearsed, almost meaningless. She was such a kind woman. We're so sorry for your loss. I nodded mechanically, unable to absorb their pity. Emily finally came to me, her voice trembling.
Dad, she wouldn't want you to stand out here in the cold.
She pressed her hand into mine, but her touch was fleeting, nervous. Jason was already guiding her back toward the line of black cars. I lingered. My chest tightened as I whispered, too softly for anyone else to hear. Goodbye, Linda. I don't know how I'm supposed to go on without you. The reception afterward was held at my house, the house Linda and I had built our life in. It was filled with murmurs, clinking glasses, and the faint smell of lilies from the funeral arrangements. I moved through it like a ghost, shaking hands, nodding, pretending to exist. At one point, I caught Jason staring at me from across the room. His lips curved, ever so slightly, into something that wasn't sympathy. It was too controlled, too deliberate. A smile, but not one meant for comfort. It sent a chill straight through me. I frowned, trying to decipher it, but before I could, Emily walked up beside him. He leaned down and whispered into her ear. Whatever he said, it made her lips twitch into the faintest smirk. For the first time all day, I felt more than grief. I felt suspicion. As I set down my untouched drink, I realized with dread, Linda's death might not have been the end of my suffering. It might have been the beginning. The days after the funeral blurred together in a haze of condolences, casseroles, and silence. Grief is supposed to bring people closer, but instead it felt like an invisible wall had been built between Emily and me. She stayed mostly in her room, emerging only when Jason coaxed her out. I wanted to reach her, but every time I tried, Jason's presence cut me off like a gatekeeper. One afternoon, the lawyer, Mr. Harris, called and said it was time to meet regarding Linda's estate. The very thought twisted something deep inside me. Linda and I had always spoken vaguely about our assets, about what we wanted for Emily when the time came. But now, the moment had arrived far sooner than I'd ever imagined. When I told Emily, she seemed nervous, but Jason's eyes lit up like a predator catching the scent of blood. Well, Jason said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks, it's better to get these things settled quickly. Lingering only makes grief harder. I bristled at his words. He spoke like Linda's life had been an item on a checklist, a task neatly crossed off. Emily didn't notice. She nodded silently, her eyes downcast. The following week, we gathered in Mr. Harris's office. It was a tall, wood-paneled room lined with shelves of leather-bound law books that no one probably touched anymore. Dust motes swam in the pale sunlight, and the air carried the faint scent of old paper and polished oak. I sat at the head of the table, the leather chair creaking beneath me. Emily and Jason sat opposite, their hands clasped together tightly, as though rehearsing for a performance. Mr. Harris cleared his throat, his voice formal but steady. "First of all, let me extend my condolences once more," he said. "Linda was, well, she was remarkable. Now, as per her will, there are several assets to address." Jason leaned forward, his jaw tight with anticipation. Emily's face was unreadable, though I caught the slightest flicker in her eyes, fear, hesitation, or maybe calculation. As Mr. Harris began to list the properties, the trust funds, and the investments Linda had left behind, I couldn't help but notice the way Jason's thumb stroked the back of Emily's hand, as if reassuring her, or reminding her of their pact. "And finally," Mr. Harris continued, "there is the matter of the beach house in Cape May. Mrs. Bennet expressed in her will that it be retained as a family property, not to be sold." Jason's smile faltered for the first time. His nostrils flared slightly. He glanced at Emily, then quickly masked his reaction with a polished grin. "Of course," he said, his tone dripping with false warmth. "Family always comes first, doesn't it?" The words were aimed at me, sharp and deliberate. Something in my gut twisted. Linda had always believed the beach house would hold our family together after she was gone, but the way Jason looked at me now, it felt like a challenge. As the lawyer shuffled papers, Jason leaned closer, his smirk widening just enough for me to catch it. His words were soft, but each one landed like a knife. "So, shall we discuss who really deserves this fortune?" Jason's words hung in the air like smoke. "So, shall we discuss who really deserves this fortune?" Mr. Harris looked up from his papers, eyebrows raised in polite confusion. But I knew exactly what Jason meant. He wasn't asking a question. He was staking a claim. "Jason," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice even, "this isn't about who deserves anything. It's about Linda's wishes." Jason leaned back in his chair, his smile sharp as glass. Of course. I'm only saying that Linda would have wanted Emily to have security. A husband takes care of his wife, after all. Isn't that right, sweetheart?" Emily squeezed his hand, but didn't meet my eyes. Mr. Harris cleared his throat and continued. "As stated in the will, the financial assets will be divided into two trusts. One is for Emily, to be released incrementally over time. The other remains under Mr. Bennet's discretion for health care and family support." I nodded, relief flooding me. Linda had been smart. She had protected the family from reckless spending, but Jason's smile didn't fade. If anything, it grew colder. "And what about the investments?" he asked, his voice too smooth. Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses. "Yes, the investment accounts. Mrs. Bennet wished for those to be jointly overseen by her husband and daughter. Any withdrawals or sales require both signatures." Jason's eyes flickered with something dark. He masked it quickly, but I caught it. He wanted control. He expected control. And Linda's will had denied him that. "That seems unnecessarily complicated," Jason said, still smiling. "Emily's perfectly capable of handling finances on her own. Isn't that right, Emily?" Emily hesitated, then murmured, "Yes, I think I could manage." "Bimbe siti tente seit so." My heart sank. Was she agreeing with him because she believed it, or because she was afraid of him? Mr. Harris continued, oblivious to the undercurrents in Betrayal, a room. As for the Cape May Beach house, Mrs. Bennet was clear. It is to remain a shared family retreat. It cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without unanimous consent. That was when Jason's hand tightened around Emily's, so hard her knuckles paled. He didn't even glance at her. His eyes were locked on me, full of quiet hostility. I finally leaned forward.
Linda wanted this family to stay together, Jason. That's why she wrote it this way. It's not about power. It's about her memory.
Jason chuckled under his breath, the sound low and mocking.
Memory doesn't pay bills, Robert. Assets do. And if you think I'll let a sentimental clause stop us, you're mistaken. For the first time, Emily looked up at me, her expression unreadable. But there was no warmth in her gaze, just something distant, almost cold. I sat back, a chill running through me. I realized then that this wasn't grief speaking. This was greed. And greed has a way of devouring everything it touches. As we left the office, Jason leaned down, his breath hot against my ear. Don't worry, old man. Soon it'll all be ours. Jason's words followed me out of the law office like a shadow. Soon it'll all be ours. I couldn't shake the sound of his voice, low and certain, as though Linda's fortune was already signed into his pocket. The more I replayed it in my head, the more restless I became. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things, that grief was making me paranoid, but the smirk on Jason's face told me otherwise. 2 nights later, Emily called. Dad,
she said, her tone carefully neutral.
Jason thought it might be good for us to have dinner together. Clear the air. Maybe move forward.
I hesitated. The idea of sitting across from Jason again turned my stomach, but Emily sounded fragile, and if there was even a small chance I could reach her, I had to try. The restaurant Jason chose was upscale, candlelit, and far too polished for what was supposed to be a family dinner. He was already there when I arrived, pulling Emily's chair out like some picture-perfect husband. I caught the satisfied glint in his eyes when he noticed my hesitation at the table. Dinner began politely enough. Jason spoke about his business ventures, about future plans, all while Emily nodded beside him. I tried to steer the conversation toward Linda, toward memories that might remind Emily of who she really was. But Jason always redirected, as though Linda's memory was an inconvenience. Halfway through, Emily excused herself to the restroom. The moment she left, Jason's posture changed. He leaned back in his chair, stretching casually, then reached for my glass. I froze, watching his hand dip beneath the table before he lifted the drink back up, swirling it as if nothing had happened. Long night, he said lightly. You should drink. You'll feel better. Before I could respond, a hand tapped my shoulder. I turned to see the restaurant's security guard, a burly man with nervous eyes. He bent down close, his voice a whisper meant only for me. Sir, he muttered, I just saw him pour something into your juice. My blood turned to ice. I forced a weak smile, nodding as if the guard had merely asked me a casual question. My hand hovered over the glass, but I didn't lift it. Jason's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, studying me like a predator waiting to see if its prey would take the bait. You're not drinking? He asked smoothly. Come on, Robert. Toast to new beginnings. I set the glass back down with deliberate calm, though inside my heart was hammering against my ribs. Emily returned just then, sliding into her seat, oblivious to the tension. Did I miss something? She asked, glancing between us. Jason smiled, his mask firmly back in place. Not at all, sweetheart. Just sharing a quiet toast with your father. He nudged the glass toward me. My fingers curled around the stem, and for a brief moment I considered lifting it. If I pretended to drink, maybe I could turn this trap back on him. Jason's smile widened, waiting. The glass felt heavy in my hand, far heavier than it should have. Jason's eyes glittered with anticipation, his smile just wide enough to betray the game he thought he was winning. Emily sat beside him, scrolling absently through her phone, oblivious to the deadly current running beneath the table. I brought the glass to my lips but didn't drink. Instead, I tilted it just enough to wet my tongue. The bitter, metallic tang that touched my taste buds was unmistakable. Linda had once described it to me when she was studying old crime cases for her book club. Arsenic compounds left a taste that clung like rust. Jason leaned forward, his voice low. Good man. That wasn't so hard, was it? I forced myself to swallow, not the liquid, but my rage. Slowly, deliberately, I set the glass back down. When Emily excused herself again, her phone buzzing with some text from a friend, I seized my chance. With a trembling hand, I switched my glass with Jason's, careful to align it as though nothing had changed. My palms were slick with sweat, but my movements were precise. Years of careful business dealings had taught me patience, and tonight, patience would be my weapon. Emily returned just as Jason lifted the glass confidently. He raised it toward me in a mocking salute before taking a deep gulp. The satisfaction on his face lasted only seconds. Then came the twitch, the widening of his eyes, the stiffening of his jaw. He coughed, choking as his throat seemed to close around the liquid. His hand clutched at his chest, the color draining from his face. "Jason?" Emily gasped, reaching for him. "What's happening?" I sat frozen, watching him convulse. For a terrifying instant, I thought I'd killed him. The weight of that possibility pressed against me like a boulder. "Dad!" Emily shrieked. "What did you do?" Her accusation sliced through me. She didn't even glance at the untouched plate. Jason survived. Of course he did. Poison alone was never going to bring down a man so determined to wring the life out of everyone around him. I received the call at dawn. He'd been stabilized at the hospital. Emily's voice on the line was sharp, almost hostile. "You need to come," she said. "Now." When I arrived, I found her in the waiting room, pacing like a caged animal. Her hair was tied back carelessly, her cheeks streaked from tears, but there was nothing soft in her expression when she saw me. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "What the hell happened last night?" I swallowed, forcing calm. What happened was Jason tried to poison me. Her laugh was bitter, harsh. "Do you even hear yourself? You've hated him since the day we got married. You've never trusted him. Now suddenly he collapses at dinner and it's his fault?" "He poured something into my drink, Emily. The security guard saw him. He warned me." Her eyes narrowed. "Convenient. A nameless guard no one else heard from. Do you even realize how paranoid you sound?" I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. She looked at me like I was already guilty, like Jason's near death was proof of my resentment. "Emily," I whispered, "you think I'd hurt your husband? After losing your mother, do you really believe I'd put you through more pain?" For a flicker of a second, I saw doubt in her eyes, but then her jaw tightened and she shook her head. "All I know is that Jason is fighting for his life, and you're standing here accusing him instead of caring." She turned away, hugging herself as though the very sight of me made her sick. I'd seen my daughter angry before, but never like this. This was cold, detached. The doctor came out announcing Jason would recover. Relief washed across Emily's face. She rushed to his room without a glance in my direction. I stood rooted to the spot. Why? I sat there frozen, the glow of the tablet screen cutting through the shadows of Emily's old room. The words blurred, but their meaning was sharp as a knife. My daughter hadn't just been fooled. She'd become an accomplice. I scrolled further, my heart pounding with each swipe. The emails stretched back months, starting shortly after Linda's funeral. Jason's words dripped with cunning. "You deserve more than your father's scraps." He's stuck in the past, clinging to memories, but we can build something real,
something powerful. And Emily's responses, those were worse. She wasn't resisting. She wasn't doubtful. She was agreeing, step by step, line by line. You're right. He'll never understand. We'll have it all soon, don't worry. I clenched the device until my knuckles turned white. Had grief blinded her so badly? Or had Jason poisoned her mind long before last night's attempt on my life? A memory stirred, one I had buried under layers of pain. Linda's last weeks, her sudden mistrust. She had tried to talk to me one evening, her hands trembling as she folded laundry. "Something isn't right with Jason," she had whispered. "The way he looks at Emily. It's not love. It's possession." I'd brushed it off, thinking grief and illness had clouded her judgment. Now, I felt the weight of my mistake pressing down on me. Linda had seen it long before I had. My eyes scanned through another thread of emails, this one labeled, "Inheritance Planning." My pulse quickened as I opened it. Jason had written, "He'll be at his weakest after Linda's death. That's when we strike. Once Emily has his confidence, she'll push the idea of transferring assets. By the time he realizes, it'll all be in our hands." Beneath it, Emily's reply, "Leave it to me. Dad trusts me. He always has." The word sliced deeper than any blade. My daughter's betrayal wasn't born in the hospital waiting room or last night's accusations. It had been seeded long ago, nurtured by Jason's poisonous influence. I closed the tablet and set it down, my chest heaving. The air in the room felt suffocating. I whispered into the emptiness, "Linda, I should have listened to you." The floor creaked behind me. I spun, half expecting Emily to be standing there, catching me in the act. But it was just the house groaning under its age, the silence pressing in. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that every wall had ears, every shadow a lurking watcher. I left the room, carrying the weight of what I'd uncovered, and retreated to Linda's study. Her framed photograph rested on the desk, her gentle smile frozen in time. I placed the tablet beside it. "Everything you feared," I murmured to her picture, "was true. Jason didn't just steal Emily's heart. He turned her against me." A sharp knock shattered the silence. I froze. "Dad?" Emily's voice. Too calm. Too controlled. "We need to talk." I quickly slid the tablet into the drawer and locked it, my hands trembling. The door opened before I could answer, and Emily stepped inside, her expression unreadable, her posture stiff. She shut the door behind her, leaving us alone in the study. Her eyes met mine, cold and distant. "I know you've been snooping," she said. The blood drained from my face. She knew. Emily's words hit me like ice water. "I know you've been snooping." For a moment my throat closed, my heart pounding like a war drum, but then instinct kicked in. I couldn't show fear. Not now. Not when she had already slipped so far from me. I forced a chuckle, leaning back in the chair. "Snooping? Emily, this is your mother's study. I come here when I miss her. That's all." Her eyes narrowed. She didn't believe me, not fully. But she didn't challenge it either. Instead, she crossed her arms, tilting her head like a prosecutor sizing up a guilty witness. "Dad, you're paranoid. Jason says you've been acting strange ever since Mom passed. If you keep this up, people will think you're unstable." That word, unstable, was no accident. It was the seed of doubt she wanted planted, the very excuse Jason could later use to declare me incompetent. I nodded slowly, pretending her words wounded me, while inside I filed them away like evidence in a trial. "Maybe you're right," I whispered, lowering my gaze to the floor. "I've been struggling. Your mother's loss. It's been hard." For the first time, her expression softened just slightly. It was my opening. I didn't need her pity. I needed her lowered guard. "Tell Jason I'll try harder," I said quietly. "I don't want you worrying about me." Emily studied me, then gave the faintest smile, cold, rehearsed. "Good. He'll be glad to hear that." And with that, she left the room, the door clicking shut behind her. The moment she was gone, my mask fell away. My hands clenched the edge of Linda's desk until my knuckles ached. If she suspected I'd seen the emails, I couldn't risk confronting her directly. Not yet. I had to be smarter. I had to lay a trap. That night, I began crafting it piece by piece. First, I pulled out the old voice recorder Linda had once used for dictating notes. A relic, small and discreet. I tested it under my bray. My own voice came back in a soft hiss. Perfect. Second, I called an old friend, Marcus, a retired attorney who had handled some of my business affairs years ago. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but grief forged strange bonds. "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low, "I need you to help me draft something, quietly. A new will. One no one knows about but us." He hesitated. "That's sudden. What's going on?" "I'll explain later," I said. "For now, just trust me. Make sure it's airtight, and keep copies somewhere safe." The trap was simple in design, but deadly in execution. I would let Emily and Jason believe they had cornered me, let them act with arrogance and overconfidence. And while they moved their pawns, I would already have the queen in place. 2 days later, the first part of my plan unfolded. We sat down for dinner, Emily, Jason, and me, at the long oak table Linda had always loved. The room felt colder without her, though the fire burned bright in the hearth. Jason poured wine, his smile polished but insincere. "To family," he said, raising his glass. I raised mine, masking my disgust. "To family." The glass touched my lips, but I didn't drink. Instead, I carefully set it back on the table, watching Jason's eyes flicker in irritation. He noticed. He always noticed. Then I spoke, feigning vulnerability. "You're right, Jason. Maybe I have been unstable. Maybe it's time I put things in order, while I still can." Emily leaned forward. "What do you mean?" I gave a weary sigh. "I've asked Marcus to come by tomorrow. We'll discuss the estate. I don't want any confusion later." Jason's smirk twitched at the corners. He thought he'd won. Good. Let him. Because hidden in Linda's study, beneath the false bottom of her desk drawer, was the recorder, and every word spoken tomorrow would be captured, every slip, every whisper of conspiracy. What they didn't know was the trap was already sprung. The next day, when Marcus walked in, Jason made his first mistake, one that would cost him everything. The morning sunlight cut through the curtains, painting golden streaks across the study where I sat waiting. Linda's portrait stared back at me, her eyes steady, reminding me of what was at stake. At 10 sharp, Jason arrived. Not Emily, Jason alone. He walked in with the confidence of a man who believed the ground beneath his feet belonged to him. His suit was sharp, his tie knotted perfectly, his smile as hollow as ever. "Mr. Anderson," he greeted, using my last name like I was just another business contact. "I hear you've made a wise decision." I tilted my head. "And what decision is that?" Jason's smirk widened, as if he knew something I didn't. He sat across from me without waiting for an invitation, crossing one leg over the other, his polished shoes catching the light. "Emily told me," he said smoothly. "You've finally realized it's time to put your affairs in order. About time, don't you think?" Inside, my blood boiled at his arrogance. But outwardly, I allowed myself a small, tired nod. "Yes, about time." Jason leaned forward, his voice dropping into something that was supposed to sound caring but reeked of control. "Listen, I know this is hard for you. Losing Linda, adjusting to everything. But I want you to trust me. I only want what's best for Emily. For all of us. Best for Emily. The same Emily whose heart and mind he had poisoned against me. I kept my voice even. And what exactly do you think is best? Jason didn't hesitate. Consolidation. The estate, the house, the assets. You've been clinging to the past. But Emily and I, we can make it thrive. You won't have to worry about a thing. Leave it to us. There it was, the naked ambition beneath the polished veneer. I leaned back, folding my hands. And what happens to me if I hand everything over? Jason's smile didn't falter, but his eyes flashed. You'll be comfortable. We'll take care of you. Take care of me. The words carried weight, a subtle threat wrapped in false kindness. I recognized it for what it was. I let silence hang between us, long enough for his confidence to settle deeper, for him to believe he was winning. Then, casually, I said, Marcus is coming by this afternoon. We'll see how things look on paper. For the first time, Jason's composure cracked. A flicker, barely there, of unease crossed his face. He quickly masked it with another smile, but I'd seen it. He didn't like surprises. He wanted control. That's great, he said, forcing cheer into his voice. I'll make sure Emily is here, too. We should all be part of this conversation. His eagerness betrayed him. He wanted to ensure nothing slipped past his grasp. I gave him a nod, my expression neutral. Inside, though, I felt the gears turning. The recorder was already in place, hidden in the study, its tiny red light waiting to capture every word. Jason rose from his seat, buttoning his jacket. I'll be back this afternoon, then. And Mr. Anderson, I appreciate your trust. Truly. He extended his hand. I shook it, feeling the strength of his grip, the calculated firmness meant to dominate. But behind my calm eyes, I was already tightening the noose. When the door closed behind him, I exhaled slowly, staring at Linda's picture again. Today, I whispered, he'll damn himself with his own tongue. That afternoon, the sound of tires crunching gravel echoed outside. Emily's laughter drifted through the open window, light and rehearsed. Jason had returned, this time with her by his side. I straightened my tie, checked the locked drawer where the recorder lay, and prepared myself. As they entered the study, Jason carried a leather folder under his arm, and inside it was something that could unravel everything one way or another. The study smelled faintly of cedar and old books, the same scent Linda had loved. But now it carried another note, tension so thick it felt alive. Marcus sat across from me at the long oak desk, his silver-framed glasses perched low on his nose, a leather briefcase at his side. He had always been calm, methodical, a man who measured his words like gold dust. That calmness was what I needed now. Emily and Jason entered together, the sound of their synchronized footsteps echoing off the hardwood floor. Jason carried a leather folder under his arm, his expression smug. Emily's eyes, however, flicked briefly toward me, cold, distant, yet searching. Mr. Cooper, Jason greeted Marcus smoothly, his politician's smile flashing. Thank you for coming. It's about time we put things in order. Marcus inclined his head politely, but his eyes darted toward me, sensing the storm beneath the surface. Of course, these matters are never easy, but clarity is important. I leaned back, forcing myself to appear weary, beaten. Let's just get through this, I muttered, my voice low. Jason wasted no time. He opened his folder and spread out several documents across the desk. I've taken the liberty of drafting a proposal, he said, tapping the top page. It outlines how assets could be managed more efficiently under Emily and my care. We're not trying to take anything from you, just Simplify things. Consolidate. Marcus raised an eyebrow. This isn't a legal draft, it's more of a suggestion. Jason smiled. A suggestion that benefits everyone. I studied the papers, my hands trembling just enough to appear weak. The words blurred before me, but I caught enough. Transfer of authority, consolidated ownership, fiduciary responsibility, all designed to strip me of control while keeping me nominally comfortable. Emily spoke then, her voice smooth but brittle. Dad, this is for the best. You can't carry this burden alone anymore. Let us handle it. I looked at her, my throat tightening. And if I refuse? Her eyes hardened. Don't make this difficult. For a moment, silence hung heavy. The fire crackled in the hearth, a log shifting and sending sparks upward like tiny explosions. Then Marcus cleared his throat. Mr. Anderson, you mentioned wanting to prepare a new will. If that's still the case, I can proceed, but I need your explicit instruction, not theirs. Jason's smile faltered. His hand tightened around the folder, knuckles whitening. Surely you understand, Marcus, he said smoothly. Mr. Anderson isn't in the best state of mind. Grief has clouded his judgment. Emily and I are simply trying to protect him from himself. Marcus's brows drew together. Are you implying he's incompetent? Jason leaned back, feigning casual confidence. I'm saying he's vulnerable, which is why we should act now, before mistakes are made. The audacity of it nearly made me break character. But I held the mask, bowing my head as though shame weighed me down. Inside, though, I was already smiling. Every word was being captured by the recorder hidden in the drawer. Every arrogant slip of Jason's tongue was evidence of manipulation, of coercion. Maybe he's right, I whispered, my voice cracking. Maybe I am weak. Jason seized the moment. Exactly. That's why Emily and I... Marcus cut him off sharply. With respect, this is not your decision. The law doesn't bend to ambition. Jason's jaw clenched, his composure cracking for the first time. He shot Emily a look, one she quickly understood. She reached for my hand across the desk, her grip firm, almost forceful. Dad, please, she said. Sign the papers. Do this for us. Her voice trembled, not with emotion, but with urgency. I stared at her, my chest tight with both pain and fury. She didn't see me as her father anymore. She saw me as an obstacle, and yet I still loved her. Even in this betrayal, that love twisted like a knife inside me. But love wouldn't save me now. Only revenge would. I gently pulled my hand free. Perhaps we should take a break. Jason's eyes narrowed, suspicion flashing. Why? What are you hiding? Before I could answer, Marcus's phone buzzed on the desk. He glanced at the screen, his face paling. You're going to want to hear this, he said. Marcus's phone buzzed like an unwelcome intruder, its shrill vibration cutting through the suffocating silence. He frowned at the screen, then at me. This isn't something I can ignore, he said, his tone grave. Jason leaned forward, irritated. If it's not relevant, put it away. We're in the middle of Marcus raised a hand to silence him. It is relevant. Very relevant. He slid the phone across the desk toward me. Listen. A voice recording played, a message from one of Marcus's contacts at the bank. The words were muffled but clear enough. Mr. Anderson's account showed unusual activity last week. A wire transfer attempt, large sum, denied for lack of authorization, initiated by Emily's login credentials. The air left the room. My heart stopped. I turned my gaze to my daughter who sat frozen, her face pale, her lips pressed tightly together. Emily? I whispered. Her eyes darted to Jason, then back to me. And in that moment, I saw it. Not guilt, not shame. Defiance. Jason broke the silence with a laugh, low and sharp. So what? She was trying to secure what's already hers. Don't act surprised. The words cut deeper than any blade. Emily didn't deny it. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed, her expression cold as stone. It was going to be mine anyway, she said flatly. Mom would have wanted it that way. You just drag things out. I felt something inside me snap. The little girl I once carried on my shoulders, who had begged me to check her closet for monsters, was gone. In her place sat a stranger, one who saw me as nothing but a stee. Pingstone. I tried to steady my voice. Emily, is that truly what you believe? That I'm just an obstacle between you and money? Her eyes flickered, just once, with something softer. But Jason placed a hand on hers, squeezing, grounding her in his poison. Whatever glimmer I saw vanished in an instant. Yes, she said. Her voice was like ice. That's exactly what I believe. The betrayal was complete. Not just an attempt on my life. Not just the scheming over inheritance. No. My daughter had chosen Jason fully, and she'd done it in front of me, without hesitation. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, clearly sensing the gravity of the moment. Mr. Anderson, we can press charges. This is attempted theft, possibly fraud, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing, a storm of grief and fury twisting into something sharper. Revenge wasn't a possibility anymore. It was inevitable. Jason smirked, leaning back, smug in his victory. You see? She's not your little girl anymore. She's mine now, and together we're going to take everything you've clung to, the house, the accounts, the legacy, everything. I stared at him, my breathing shallow, every muscle in my body taut with rage, yet I forced myself to stay still, to keep my expression blank. Maybe you're right, I said softly, my voice so low it was almost a whisper. Maybe everything I built means nothing now. Jason grinned, mistaking my restraint for surrender. Finally, you're starting to understand. Emily's gaze lingered on me, but it was unreadable. Somewhere deep inside, I wondered if a part of her still struggled, still remembered who I was. But that question no longer mattered. I knew what had to be done. That night, long after Marcus had left and Jason had taken Emily back to their apartment, I sat alone in the study, the house eerily quiet. I opened the drawer, retrieving the recorder. The tiny red light blinked, loyal and silent. Every word of their arrogance, every confession, was mine now. I pressed play, letting Jason's voice echo into the room. She's mine now. And together, we're going to take everything. The words chilled me, but they also steeled me. Revenge was no longer an idea. It was a promise. And tomorrow, I would make the first move. The morning of the inheritance reading arrived with a heaviness that clung to the air like damp fog. My lawyer's office was crowded. Family, lawyers, even a few opportunists pretending to be friends. Everyone sat in brittle silence, waiting for the words that would determine futures. My daughter sat across from me, her chin lifted arrogantly, as if she had already claimed victory. Jason sat to my right, quiet but steady, his presence like a reminder that not all bonds had been poisoned. The lawyer cleared his throat and began. His voice was neutral, detached, but each word struck like a hammer. The properties, the accounts, the legacy, all spoken into the air where greed could twist them. My daughter leaned forward, her lips curving into a faint smile every time a number was mentioned, convinced that her web of deceit had secured her everything. But then came the shift. The lawyer paused, shuffled papers, and read the final clause. My clause. Due to recent discoveries of fraud, forgery, and attempted harm, he announced, the assets originally allocated to Miss Clara will instead be redirected. The entirety of the estate, save for one symbolic dollar, is hereby passed to Mr. Jason, the rightful heir. The silence broke like glass. My daughter shot to her feet, her face drained of color, words tumbling from her mouth, denials, accusations, venom. "You can't do this! I am his blood! His daughter!" Her voice cracked, but no sympathy rose in the room. Jason finally stood, his tone steady yet sharp as steel. Blood means nothing when it's poisoned. For the first time, my daughter looked small, stripped of her power, her manipulations exposed. Her coldness had left her with ashes in her hands while the inheritance she had plotted or now slipped beyond her reach. I sat in silence, not triumphant, not broken, simply resolved. She had chosen betrayal. I had chosen justice. My legacy would not be one of submission to cruelty, but of resistance against it. As the gavel of finality echoed in that office, I realized the true inheritance was not the wealth passed down, but the clarity earned through fire. Trust can be broken, blood can betray, but truth, once revealed, burns everything false to ash. And yet, as we left the office, I knew this was not the end. Ashes have a way of smoldering, and those who lose everything often become the most dangerous.